go fishing. Wow, easy. So while I'm in Bend, one of the big things I wanted to do was visit my friend Jake. I worked with him last summer in Lassen, and he just recently started up his own custom axe making shop where he makes handles from scratch and collects really old axe heads and has been selling them. So we're gonna go check that out today.
So mostly I'm looking at the end grain, right? So I'm looking at how all of this grain stacks up. Essentially what I want to see is pretty tight grain. On a board like this, I want to see a lot of those growth rings instead of if you look at just a piece of pine, but see how the growth rings are really wide. I want to see something really dense. And then because those axes are going to be hung with the bit kind of like this, I want to see the grain running across. You can see like the grain kind of will come in sideways,
Right.
And I'll usually try and not use that part and try and keep it straight, but essentially that's what I'm looking for, tight grain and grain that's pretty straight.
I've never thought about the fact that when you're looking for grain that runs parallel to the way you're swinging it, that a tree is circular, so it's actually really hard to get it perfectly totally straight.
What I usually try and do is I'll keep the straightest grain for axes that I know I'm going to build for like a work axe. Or a big axe, someone who's going to split firewood or swing it at stuff. And then those kind of diagonal ones, the worst grain, I usually try and use it for like a camp axe, something that's like lighter duty. Yeah, so once I get back to the shop with some wood, I'll bring it over to the table saw, decide how I'm going to use it, and I'll cut it up into pieces that will be like useful for handles. Then I usually will draw the template on. So then I'll end up with something like this, which is essentially that template that's cut out. And then at that point, there's just a couple more things marking the middle and cutting this top curve. And then you're like, I'm ready to start shaving at that point.
And what tools do you use primarily to shave and shape it?
Yeah, so the main thing that I'm using when I'm like shaping is the main thing really is this spoke shave. That removes 99% of the material. A lot of the finer stuff I'll do with like this Japanese file. This is nice that it has this like radius on it, so I can get into like sort of tighter spots with that sort of curve to it. And then this Shinto rasp also removes a lot of material and really helps me to get like really nice, uniform, rounded edges, you know. And I can go kind of, with this, I can go slowly and sort of kind of feel the handle as I go. That's one of the things I really like about it.
Nice.
Yeah. So what really ends up happening is I almost hang the axe first before I even shape it.
Okay.
So I take it from a piece like that to something like this that's cut out on the bandsaw. And then I have a particular axe head picked out that's going to go on there, right? And so I put the outline of the eye onto the axe. I get this kerf lined up in the whole middle of what's going to be the handle. And the first step in shaping really is to get the axe to go on here straight and line up with this middle of the handle. And this is like the step where you can mess up. Basically, my process has been to like hang it first without wedging the top, but like hang the whole thing, get it set and straight, and then start shaping the rest of the handle.
Cool. Yeah, I didn't realize that that's something that you would do first.
Yeah.
But it makes sense, because then you shape it all and then it goes on crooked, and you've basically wasted all of your time doing it.
And then also, like, when you're shaping it too, like, if this isn't perfectly straight, like if it's off from this center line a tiny bit, well, I can just move that center line a little bit. I have all this wood to work with, right? Like, this is going to be round, so I can move it a little bit and still make it symmetrical as long as it's not too bad. The grain will be not straight, not perfectly straight, right? But if the axe head if I get it and mess it up a little and it's off a tiny bit, I can just make that the new middle and shape it. Whereas if I shape this whole thing, then there's only one middle, and if I mess up hanging it, then, you know, I got to start over. So I kind of just try and get stuff that I like, that I haven't seen before, that you know, that's unique and just seems old. Recently, I've kind of been buying jerseys for the most part, just because they're super cool. Honestly, like, a jersey is like one of the first axes that like really got me psyched about axes. Like, I got this one. Obviously, Craftsman axes are super cool. Really old. They're made by, I forget, either Mann or Warren. One of those old axe makers made them for like Craftsman, I think. But like this one I got just because it's like, I'm pretty sure you would call that a Dayton pattern, and it's just a cool pattern, you know, it's a cool shape. I tend to get a lot of single bits. I have some double bits, but I don't know, I just don't like hanging them as much. They're a little bit harder to deal with, and then they're also harder to sell, so I don't really get too many double bits unless it's like a cool maker or something like that. So the last couple of months I've been getting a bunch on eBay, and just getting stuff that I can find for cheap. Generally what's a deal breaker is like cracks and stuff like this. Like, I don't want to see cracks like that. The pitting, I honestly don't mind it too much unless it's kind of gone through the whole thing. I kind of like the look of it. So that's the other thing. I like to get stuff that I can give to people for a reasonable price, you know. I like to get stuff that I can give to people who will like work with it, you know. So that's kind of part of the motivation. So usually I'm looking for stuff that's like kind of at a bargain, and a lot of times it's a little bit beat up. Axes, I'll soak them in this stuff called Evapo Rust, if they're really rusty and pitted and everything. And the Evaporust just, it's this super cool non-toxic rust remover, and it just like dissolves it.
Yeah, what's your personal take on restoring axe heads? Like, do you like to take the patina off and have them be shiny? You like to leave them how they naturally would have looked?
Yeah, my main thing is to leave that, I generally do as little as possible. With like really rusty stuff, and also really pitted stuff, like I'm gonna start messing around with in the next couple weeks, like kind of like using maybe a fine grit sandpaper on an angle grinder or something, just to get it kind of shiny and have the pitting kind of pop out. I generally don't do that if there's like a maker's mark stamped on it or something like that, where I could remove like a stamp. My name is Jake Scarina. My shop name is tentatively Central Oregon Chop Shop, and we are, making axes here in Central Oregon. I guess my most related kind of work experience and what got me into axes was working with the Forest Service. I worked on a couple different national forests for 6 seasons probably, doing work on wilderness crews, wilderness trail crews, and trail crews. And so using tools that, are compliant with the Wilderness Act. I guess that started me using hand tools and getting familiar with them. And I guess what got me into axes too. Axes in that line of work are a super versatile tool, super lightweight when you're carrying them really far, and when you're traveling solo in the backcountry, it's just a good tool to have with you. So it was kind of my first experience with axes basically, and thinking of them more as just of something that's super valuable, I guess. I think there's probably a number of things that inspired me to start my own shop. I've always liked kind of messing around with wood and seeing the process of wood transform to something as you kind of carve layers of it away, seeing all the grain kind of pop out and stuff. So that was one thing. I just kind of was interested in doing something like making axe handles. But really, I think the thing that got the idea in my head that I should make an axe handle is just the fact that it's hard to get a good axe handle. There's not that many people that are making axe handles that are putting a lot of attention into the shapes, picking good wood, and that's kind of like this lost art. My first thought was like, can I make something for myself to use that I can give to my friends that's better than what you can get at a hardware store? I've been expanding on that idea. I try to do as much as I can. I have rehung axe heads that people have, whether it was like their dad's or something they found in the garage, or they just bought it from somewhere else. I also sell stuff. I'll buy axe heads in kind of quantities and then make handles as I get time, and then just kind of sell them that way, already made up. And I have done like some custom handles, special designs or requests for certain things, but for the most part I can do my best to make whatever folks want or are looking for. Next thing that I want to start experimenting with too are these like the swells up here. There's this one guy whose designs I really like who has, I don't know how he gets them, but he gets these like sort of ridges, these cool lines that come up. Yeah. And so you kind of get this really cool straight line, like a ridge that goes around.
Oh, interesting.
He does them more for like, showpiece type of things, but
yeah,
it's just super
no, that's cool. That's cool. All right, well, let's swing some axes into stumps and like chop some wood and stuff. Cool.